Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to look at nested statements. So there are lots of different kinds of ways of nesting statements, including nesting while loops or nesting for loops, and inside of them having if statements. And the idea with this is you can embed code into it to kind of make it run and kind of evaluate different things. And this is where the code starts to really take shape and do really complex things in a fairly easy to understand way. So the one that we're going to concentrate on pretty much for this lesson then is this nested if statement. And then we're going to do a challenge using this knowledge to create a which dino am I flowchart quiz, which should be a bit of fun. So what I'm going to start saying from the off is I want you to complete this just using the nested if statements. I want you to have a really firm understanding of what nested if statements are and how to use them. This is not the most efficient way of doing it. In actual fact, if you complete this task, and I'm hoping you will for those full marks, your head is going to be willing to explode. It's that complex. And then I'll show you some more ways of doing it that are slightly simpler. But if you manage to complete this particular challenge just using nested if statements, there is nothing you can't do with code. It's really is that cool. So what I'd like you to do then is create a new file called what are nested if statements, dino flowchart quiz, and then we're going to look at what the nested if statements are. So this is the quiz that we're going to be doing. As you can see, it's a fairly simple one. It's just something I got from one of my kids' books. And it's a really nice one. The way that if you answer a question, do you like to eat meat? And if you answer yes, you get to move on to this question. If you answer sometimes, you get to move on to this question. And if you answer no, you get to move on to this one. So if we answer no, it says, do you like crawling? So if you say no again, then it moves on to this question. Are you good at defending yourselves? And if you say yes, you go, do you have spiky hair? And if you say yes again, it says you are a stegosaurus. And that's the aim of the game. It's finding out which dino you are. And this can be achieved in loads of different ways, but for this particular exercise, we're going to complete it just using nested if statements. So nested statements, if you were to think about a while loop, and you could say while name being a variable equals Mr. C, and then you could actually just run that and it would be a loop. But when you nest something, then you'd say if, or to nest a while loop, you'd say while something else is, so while current is less than 7, do this. So it's nesting in the way that this must be evaluated first, then this must be evaluated, and then to nest again, then you could put your if statement in there. If name, I don't know, no, not name, if current is greater than 5, then you do this. Okay, so that's the idea. And every time you do something, it indents itself one more. So if you're indenting, remember that's 4 space bars, or it's just 1 tab key. Okay, so this one here, this one underneath, is 2 tab keys or 8 clicks. I tend to use the tab keys more than I do the space bars, because once you start getting into this situation, the indentation can get really, really complex. Another thing you need to remember is that when you're doing your elifs, they need to be in the same line. Okay, so when you do your elses, they also need to be in the same line. So if you were to nest it again, then you could say if, and then you could nest this again, and you could say else, and then if you wanted to nest again, you could say if, and all the time you're just comparing data and you're having these comparisons to do. Okay, and this is the situation we're going to get to with this. So the nested if statement is basically saying, let's do this, and then let's compare this, and then if this is right, then do this. If it's not right, then you have to drop down from this one all the way to here, and if this one isn't right, you drop down to here, and then you finish the game. If it is correct, then you can go to here. If this isn't correct, then you jump down to here, and so on. So you get an idea based on the way that they're indented, how it's going to fall through if something doesn't calculate. This will make more sense in just a moment when we start looking at our flowchart quiz. So let's begin that now. So let's just start by just having a couple of print statements. Oops, excuse me. Sorry about that if that popped your ears. Let me just have a couple of if statements. A couple of printed statements just to get this game rolling. So print out, hello, answer the following questions so I can find what kind of person you are. Find out what kind of person you are. So let's just make sure this runs, make sure everything's working. There we go. Hello, answer the following questions so I can find out what kind of person you are. So, and then we can start the game. Now, one thing I will do on this particular one is I'll print end as well. And you don't necessarily have to do this, but it's a really good way of seeing if the game's ended, because if you get to the end of your nested if statements and nothing happens, it's going to be like, why is that not working? So I'm just going to put this print statement and I'm going to get it out of the way. I don't need it for a long time. So then we can start. So let's have a look at our quiz. So the first question I want to ask is, do you like to eat meat? So on this one here, and another thing you should know is the way in which the structure works. So this is a general flowchart quiz, and as you start to plan your projects, you'll work in this way with these kind of symbols, with these rectangles and these lines and these kind of statements here. This is, although it's taken from a kid's book, it is a very generic way of working with a program and trying to work out how a program would flow. So in the next projects, I will get you to create your own flowchart quizzes or your own flowcharts, just so that you can understand how your program is going to work, and then we'll get to coding it. So in this first block, then it says, do you like to eat meat? And then we move on to this one here. So what I would say, this one is question 1. And then I would say that all 3 of these here, so do you like hanging around with your friends? Can you run really fast, or do you like crawling? They're all question 2. So I would necessarily put them in order. So I'd say this is question 2A, this is question 2B, this is question 2C. Then I'd come to this one here and I'd label this question 3A, 3B, question 3B, question 3C. And then I would say question 4A, question 4B, and question 4C. Depending on how your program runs, you could also say answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4, because these are the outputs. There's nothing else to ask. They are the outputs, depending on how you store that information. For this particular quiz, I'm just going to store it as a print statement, so we don't really need to worry about this. So question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. And if you assign them in that way, it will become slightly easier. So question 1. Yeah, so I don't need to put question 1A because there is only one question. And it says input. And the actual question that I'm going to ask myself is, do you like to eat meat? Okay, and we can put a question mark there. Now, you are going to want to tell the user how to answer. So I would say yes, no, sometimes. Okay, and that takes care of that. So if they answer those, absolutely fine. So the next thing then is where our if statements start, and it's going to get quite unwieldy, and I'll do the first few and then I'm going to give you the challenge of just completing it. Okay, so question 1, if question 1 is equal to, and what's the first one it needs to be equal to? So we're going up here, so if it's equal to yes, then let's do something. What do we need it to do if it's equal to yes? We need it to ask the next question. So the next question it's going to ask is question 2A. So we say question 2A input. So there's a lot of repeating ourselves here. We'll deal with some of that later on, but I do want you to do it as a nested if statement for now, just to kind of go through the process of writing it like this. So the next question is, Do you like hanging around with your friends? And then for this one, we only need a no or a yes, okay? So yes or a no. So we don't need a sometimes, and none of these other ones need sometimes, so we don't need to worry about that. So let's just put yes, no. And from there, we're just going to go back one step now. So before we ask our next if question, I need to put in the next part of our first question. So the next part is an elif, and it's this one here. Can you run really fast? So I'm just going to say elif, question 1 is equal to, and what is that, sometimes. Then ask the next question. So question 2b, I believe. Let me just check that. So question 2b, can you run really fast? Input. Can you run really fast? And once again, this is just a yes or a no. And then we just need to do the last one. Now, if we did another elif, we'd have to have an else for anything that was just wrong. So I'm just going to put an else in there. And I'm just going to put print. So if they get it wrong, if they don't type in yes, or sorry, if they don't type in no properly, or they just type something random, it will always run this particular question. So we just say print, and let's just be a little bit funny. I'm going to assume you said, oops, no. Okay, and then that will allow me to ask the next question. So we say question, let's just make sure that is 2C. Yep, 2C, do you like crawling? Question 2C. Input. Do you like crawling? Let me say yes. So hopefully you're seeing there's lots of repetition here. And I'm sorry I'm typing it all out, but in actual fact, if I don't do it this way, then you might look at this later on and go, wow, what was he thinking? So you can now see that we are up to question 2. And at this particular juncture, it all looks fairly simple. We haven't put any nested if statements in yet. They're just about to start right now. So let's put the next one in. So we've said this question 2a. So then what we need to say, so the question 2a is, if the answer is yes, are you clever? Sorry, if the answer is no, are you clever? So make sure we've got that indent just to there. So it says if question 2a is equal to no, then we say question 3a. Let's make sure that's right. Question 3a, are you clever? So input again. Are you clever? Then it's just yes and no. And then from here we can move on. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the else, because it's only a yes or no. So I'm just going to do the else. And once again, I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to assume you said yes. I'm just going to copy this. Copy. I'm going to assume you said yes. Okay, so then we have our next question here. So if question 3b, which is yes, are you good at defending yourself? So let's just do that bit now. So question 3b, input. Are you good at once again it's just yes or no again. And this is where I'm going to leave you guys to do it, because you can see which way I'm going with this. Actually, let me just do one more just so you can see. So you've still got to fill in the next questions for these ones. But if I do one more nested on this if statement, so let's go. So we'll do another if statement. So if question 3a is equal to, let's see, question 3a, 1, 2, 3a is equal to yes, go on to your scary. So if question 3 is equal to yes, then it's question 4a, input, are you scary? Once again, just yes, no. Okay, and from there, actually I could probably just finish this now. If you're scary, then it will go on to the other yes one. So don't forget, you still got to put your else in there. So we do need to finish off the else statement here as well. So there will be another question here, which I'm, 4b I think it was. Let me just check. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4b. So that one there would say question 4b. So on, and then you would come to the answer. So let me just finish the last statement. You are a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's just print this out. Just give me 2 secs. So just to finish, just one line for you guys. I know I've done probably a little bit more than I was going to. Print Rex. Let's make sure that's right. If no, it's not quite right. Let's undo that. Let's say if question 4a is equal to yes, then we're going to print out the answer. So there you go. There is one path, but you do have to do all the other paths. So you can see that it will get quite unwieldy, and that's absolutely fine. I want to see how far you guys can take this, to see if you can get a completed piece of code for every different scenario using the which dino quiz am I. You'll find this quiz in the footnotes, so download that and you can use that and you can mark up your questions you want. Give it a go, and I'll see you in the next lesson.